I want to revisit something I said earlier about the PCA, the probable cause affidavit. Now, there's a couple of things about it. First of all, you have to remember that they only have to give as much as they need for a probable cause for arrest, basically for charging in this document. So there's a lot of information missing. But the other thing is that there's a lot of information that's pretty obscure and intentionally misleading, I think, in this document. And I kind of hinted at that earlier, but I didn't really go into a lot of detail. But for example, there's a lot of information about where the suspect vehicle 1 is versus the white Elantra. So sometimes it's called the suspect vehicle 1, and sometimes it's called the white Elantra. And I think you'll find that there's actually 2 vehicles. There's Kohberger's own vehicle, which is a white Elantra 2015, and there's another white Elantra that's a 2011 to 2013, and I've got lots of evidence to back that up, and I'll show you all that later on. However, they're obscure in this document about which one they're talking about at any particular time, and I think that's intentional. And also, the cell phone data, they're very cautious about the way they describe it, and I think that's intentional, because I think that they believe the cell phone at some points was not in the white Elantra or the suspect vehicle 1, or I'm not sure exactly what. And the reason I think that is because first of all, these maps are very obscure. Even in the real copy of this document, you can't really read these maps. And obviously on here, you can't see them at all, pretty much. The descriptions of where they think the phone traveled are especially vague and misleading a little bit. Sometimes it talks about Johnson, Idaho, where Johnson, Idaho doesn't really exist. We think Johnson, Idaho is actually in Washington, we think. There's a Johnson Road, which that's ambiguous too. There is a long Johnson Road. Let me just show you some of this stuff. So there is a Johnson Road in Pullman, Washington. Let's just have a look at that. Now, this road goes kind of like down here, but at one time it's talking about it going west towards, hang on, I'm forgetting what the actual PCA says. I don't want to use the wrong words. Hang on a sec. Okay, so this is the bit about it being a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra, and then it says upon further review, it could be a 2011 to 2016, which would include that 2015 one. And I think the reason they've written it in that weird way is because I think Kohberger used a 2011 to 2013 Elantra on the night with his tags. So with like no tag on the front and a back tag that was his tag for the 2015. I think he swapped their tags or something. So, I think that's one reason why that's vague. Now, this piece here is where it talks about it traveling in different directions at different times. So at 5:25, a white sedan, which was consistent with the description of suspect vehicle 1. And when I think what they mean is when they say which was consistent with the description of suspect vehicle 1, I think what they mean is it has the same tag as vehicle 1. Was observed on 5 cameras in Pullman, Washington, and on Washington campus cameras. So the sedan was located at 1300 Johnson Road in Pullman, was observed traveling northbound on that road. And this road leads directly back to this West Palouse River Drive. Now, we keep talking about this same road in Moscow, okay? Now, it's not saying that car traveled that road towards Moscow, but it does say it does connect to that road. And I think there's a reason they're saying that. I'm not exactly sure why they're saying it. I think maybe they think the perp did drive back this way later on that day or something. And it connects to that Conestoga Drive, and this is the location where we think the perp left something. Maybe it was a knife, maybe it was some evidence, I don't know. Anyway, so I think they're being very vague about that for a reason. Now, there's another couple of addresses that they use in here that just can't be possible. Like it's like where the phone is at different times. One place where the phone is in about it's about 20 miles from the next location they mention, and yet it gets to that new location in -1 minute. Things like that. So that there's some of these locations that can't possibly be true, and I think that's put in here in a vague way so that people won't really notice. But what the police are really saying is, we think that Brian Kohberger manipulated his phone somehow to make it look like it was in a different location or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. There's some really funny stuff going on here. Okay, so let's look at the phone information. This is all about the car here. Yeah, so this is the phone information. Now, on the actual night of the murders, estimated locations of the 8458 phone. Now, notice that they're only talking about the 8458 phone here. We believe there are at least one other phone involved in this, possibly two, but they're talking about the one we know is Kohberger's, 8458. So it went on Northeast Valley Road in Pullman, which is pretty much where his residence was, where his apartments were. It used resources close to the Kohberger residence, blah, 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 traveling through Pullman. So pretty much they're saying it drove towards Moscow on Highway 95. Okay. So then at around 4:48, so this is just after the murders happened. We think the murders happened somewhere just before 4:25 a.m. So at 4:48, the phone is detected on Idaho State Highway 95, south of Moscow, ID near Blaine. Okay, so let's look at that. So let's go to Blaine, Idaho, for example. Sorry, I spelled it wrong. Okay, so that's Blaine, Idaho. So they think that straight after the murders, pretty much, the phone went here. Okay, and there's I-95 is actually this road. So they think this phone was traveling down I-95 near Blaine. Okay, that's what they think. I-95 south of Moscow, ID near Blaine. So north of Genesee. So I don't know how you pronounce Genesee. So Genesee is here. Okay, so they think the phone was somewhere around here. Okay, now they're saying the phone, they're not saying the car, and they're not saying Brian, they're just saying the phone. Okay, so between 4:50 and 5:26, the phone seems to be using resources on the way to Genesee ID. Okay, Genesee, Idaho, and then travels west towards Uniontown. So where's Uniontown? So Uniontown is here. So they basically say the phone went from sort of Blaine area to Genesee to Uniontown. Okay, so that's what they're saying. So this is at approximately 5:30 a.m. So then they're talking about it going north on Stadium Drive at 5:27 a.m. Now notice right now we think at 5:30 a.m. it's, hang on, where are we? So at 5:26 a.m. it seems to be around like Uniontown. At 5:30 a.m. we're saying here that it's hitting the Pullman, Washington area. Well, Pullman, Washington from Uniontown is quite a long distance. Let's actually look at that. So let's do Blaine and then add a directions to Uniontown and then to Pullman, Washington. So we're going to put Blaine first. So let's move Blaine up here. There we go. Okay, so we think he went from Moscow to Blaine, and then down here. So if we look at the details here, okay. So we think he went from Blaine to Uniontown. This is the phone, sorry, not he. We don't know it was him. So at Uniontown, that was 20 minutes, okay, from Blaine to Uniontown. And then to Pullman, that was 24 minutes. So they're saying basically the phone was in Uniontown 1 minute and in Pullman like the next couple of minutes, and yet it should take 25 minutes for that to happen. So there's something wrong here, right? We know that, right? So Uniontown, just to recap, at 5:26 they think the phone is still at Uniontown, but at 5:30 it's in Pullman. So in 4 minutes it's got all the way to Pullman from Uniontown, it seems. So that's wrong, right? So on November the 13th, this is, in the early hours, the murders happened like at 4 a.m., but this is talking about 9 a.m., so a few hours after the murders happened. This phone, and this is pretty concrete, it says 8458, it's his phone, left the Kohberger residence at approximately 9 a.m. and travelled to Moscow, Idaho. Now, they must know something about that path. It must have hit a few cell phone towers or something. Specifically, this phone utilised cellular resources that would provide coverage to the King Road residence between 9:12 a.m. and 9:21 a.m. Now, this is where I think he went back to the scene of the crime to see whether anything had happened yet, and to see if there was any fuss, to see what was going on and that kind of thing. And this is very common in perps who do multiple murders or serial killing and that kind of thing. They like to go back to the scene of the crime and see the fuss they've made, kind of thing. So I think that's kind of what the police are getting at here. This is why they think he made this visit. Now I want to show you, this is the house right behind 1122 King Road. And this is a black truck, very consistent with that black truck that we saw on the video earlier on the morning of the murders, leaving at around 4:22:40 a.m. So I think this is that black truck, personally. And I think what he did was, first of all, he drove the Elantra up here and left the Elantra up here. Then he ran down the back here. This running down the back here from the back of this house is very, very quick. And remember, he's a sprinter. He knows how to run. And then I think he ran over here, like straight after the murders, and got in the black truck here and drove the black truck around here. And the black truck had all of the evidence in it and that kind of thing. And he either swapped from the Hyundai from the black truck to the Hyundai, or he might have left the evidence in the Hyundai Elantra. I'm not sure. One of the two happened. But anyway, that's why there's a delay, first of all, between when the Elantra leaves this area and is next seen, and they can't say exactly how it got out of this neighborhood, I think, because he was doing all that. And it's possible he was even in the black truck at that point. I don't know. But the next thing they think happened was he went to Conestoga Drive here, and drove towards Highway 95 here. So I think they think what he did was he went around here, around here, around here, and then back to I-95, and then went south. Okay, so that was in the PCA. But I think before that, there is a gap. So there's like the Hyundai Elantra leaves King Road about 4:20, 4:20 a.m. But there's a gap between then and when it's next seen, and there's a time delay, and they weren't sure what that was all about. Well, I think it's because of this. I think he goes to this house, he cleans himself up, has a shower, swaps things in the car, that kind of thing, and then drives off in either, I'm assuming, the Elantra at that point. So I think that's why there's not evidence in his car. And I think it was probably in this black truck, and he ran up the hill and he got a shower and cleaned out and everything. That's my guess. But very quickly, because then, in 20 minutes later, he is, going south on I-95. So that's my guess. But on this particular visit, we're talking about the next morning where he's trying to see if there's any fuss. I think this house was a great vantage point to see if there was any fuss at 11:22, because it's right behind this house. So he was looking to see if any fuss had happened, and the police had been called and all that kind of thing. And when he didn't see anything, he got in the car, the Hyundai Elantra, and drove up here and back again. And I believe he was seen doing that. I've heard rumors of that. So I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I believe. Okay. So that's why I think they believe he was there between 9:12 and 9:21. Not only because he used the cellular resources, but I think he was seen. I think there was security camera or something like that. Something saw him there. And then he went back home at 9:32 a.m. approximately. So again, we've got one of these vague maps, so we don't really know, what route he took, but some of this stuff is really vague. And at one point they're saying, so first of all, we know that he seemed to turn off his phone between 2:47 and 4:48. So they think that was his attempt to conceal his location while he was doing the murders. Then later on, they looked at a lot more information from the phone, and they think, first of all, that he used the area around the King Road residence a number of times with his phone. So we think he was visiting that area a lot before the murders. Then on the day after the murder, so remember the murders happened like 4 a.m, so like a few hours later, like lunchtime, 12:36, it looks like he was at Kate's Cup of Joe in Clarkston in Washington. And then some surveillance footage shows that there was a white Elantra there. He was with a white Elantra, so they're trying to show that he was definitely with a white Elantra at that point. And when they say consistent with suspect vehicle 1, I think what they're trying to say is it had the same tag number. So he drove past the Cup of Joe, and then I think he went to the Albertsons grocery store and so on. So, they think they've got him there with that vehicle as well, with a white Elantra there as well. He walked through the store. I'd love to know what he bought. It says, he bought some stuff at the checkout and left at approximately 1:04 p.m. So this was kind of what they think he did. Now, the interesting thing is that there's a time period when he stops reporting to the network. His phone stops reporting to the network from approximately 5:36 to 8:30. Now, this is a period of time when it's possible he dumped the other Elantra. That's my theory. And we'll get into why I think there was another Elantra and all the evidence that I've got around that. So let's go back to my list of stuff. So the cars. Let's look at the cars first of all. So there's a lot of stuff here. So, we've got proof that he had this particular Elantra because he got warrants for his for failure to appear and stuff like that, for car stops by the police and things like that. So we know that he had that car. But there is another car that we think was based very close to 11:22, possibly at 11:12, I think it is. So let's look at some of that stuff. So this is just about the black truck again, just showing you that, 1271 Walenta Drive, right behind King Road, 11:22 King Road. They definitely have a black truck, and it's repeatedly shown in Google Maps and stuff. Seen many pictures of that. This one, I think, was the one that was taken on the day of the murders or something. Like somebody took some video camera on the day of the murders around the area just to see who was where and everything. Okay, so this is the path that allegedly the perp took on the night. So you probably remember there was a garage that caught a white Hyundai Elantra on security cameras, and at the time we thought it wasn't relevant because we thought the time of death was between 3 and 4, but now we know that at least some of the killings happened after 4 a.m. It makes more sense now that maybe the killer went back to the scene of the crime to get the sheath and ended up killing Ethan and Xana. So we think there were 2 visits. There was a visit between 3:30 and 3:45 a.m. when Kaylee and Maddie were killed, and then another visit between 4:07 a.m. ish and 4:25 a.m. ish when Xana and Ethan were killed. So I think what we think happened is the car kind of went out here, went up this way. Let's do this. Went up this way to White and Steiner Avenue, and then turned back and came back either this way or this way, we're not sure, to get to 1122 King Road. So it was seen on a number of surveillance cameras on that loop back, apparently, and we think that explains why that garage had that footage of that Hyundai Elantra at that time. And he sped out of here, we think, because the adrenaline after you kill someone is huge, and you're trying to get away with it and all that kind of thing. And then realized he hadn't got the sheath at some point, doubled back, and again sped very fast back, and then got very frustrated here when he found that the DoorDash was here and so on, at 4 a.m. roughly. Okay, so that's what we think happened. So this is the gas station thing. Now remember, this was at a time when people thought that the killings had happened before 3 a.m. So there was confusion about whether or not this car was really a Hyundai Elantra. Well, I think that's now agreed that it is a Hyundai Elantra. There were a number of forums looking at all the different shapes of cars and stuff like that. But it was captured at 3:45 a.m. Now, this is why I think this is after the first 2 killings, after Maddie and Kaylee were killed, and before the second set of killings, like Xana and Ethan. So it's headed towards the crime scene, and now that is consistent with what we believe the killer would have done, because we think they went back to the crime scene after the crime to get the knife sheath, we think. There's a vape shop. Blah, blah, blah. What else do we need to know on here? What is less clear is what Ellie has in the King Road neighborhood, so we don't know what they've got. Law enforcement probably have a lot of cameras that we don't know about. Okay, so this is the citation that proves that, Kohberger had the Hyundai Elantra with LFZ 8649. We also know he swapped his plates on the 18th of November, just after this crime, for that car. But this is, just proof that he did own that car, and it is his, and also proof of his birth date, 11/21. Remember that date, 11/21. It becomes important later on. So this is just the DoorDash driver. So we don't, not the DoorDash driver, the Lyft driver. We don't need to worry about that one right now. Okay. So I'm going to do some stuff that's going to link the car to somebody, and I want to start. I'm not sure where to start here because there's a lot of stuff here. So first of all, we went through this Eugene, Oregon car that was dumped, okay? And we got lots of photos of it. It was a Hyundai Elantra. It was a 2013, I think, or 11. No, 11, I think. Oh gosh, I've forgotten. Anyway, you'll see in a minute when we look at the paperwork. So it was crashed, it was abandoned, and this was like a few days after the crime. It was found abandoned. So everyone was looking out for a Hyundai Elantra, and here is a crashed and burned one. And this is in Eugene, Oregon, which is not that far. It's about an hour and a bit from Moscow, or from Pullman, Washington, is where we think is most important. So it was in this kind of state. But one of our sleuths, luckily, took a really good look at this car and got the VIN number. Okay, so we have got the VIN number shot somewhere here. Now, where's that? Where's the VIN number? I've got it somewhere. Here it is. So this is the VIN number. So this was on a Reddit that we were all doing the investigation together. So we know it ends in 2732, starts in 5NP. And this was in Eugene, Oregon. And there was actually a stabbing on November the 14th there too. We're not sure if that was just a coincidence or what. It could be, it might not be. So Eugene, Oregon is about an hour south of Salem on I-5. So in Eugene, Oregon, on November the 14th, there was a stabbing. So we know that, okay? But we don't know if it's related to this or not. But we've got the VIN number anyway. So using that VIN number, we looked up the information about the car. Now, let me find the exact one that I need to find for that. I have to find it. It's not that one. Let's see if this probably helps. Okay, so the second Elantra, we think, this one that's abandoned in Eugene, Oregon, belonged to Pamela Gallagher, right? And I can show you in a minute why we think that. Now, her daughter, Kate Gallagher, we think, lives with Dan Esty in Cascadilla Street in Crested Butte, Colorado. Now, why does that matter? Dan Esty was was property manager for 1122 King Road and the property next door. We think his stepson, maybe called Ben, may have stayed at 1112. That should say 1112. Next door to, let me change this now so that I don't forget. That should be 1112. We think he stayed at 1112, which is next door to 1122. And this is Esty. Right. So we think Ben, the stepson, stayed in his other property right next door, and he was driving the Elantra. We think it was parked outside that house, we think. So this is why we think there were two Elantras involved in all of this. So shortly after the murders, the car was dumped in Eugene, Oregon. There was a car crash and or a stabbing the day the car was dumped. And interestingly, the police records are missing for that key period of time. And a sleuth got the VIN number before the cops got to the car. Okay, so let's see some of the evidence here. So this is the one that proves that Pamela Gallagher, we got rid of her name here, but we now know that that's Pamela Gallagher. This VIN number belonged to her. And this was the previous plate of that car. And we've got some more information about that here. Okay. Now, how do we link Gallagher back to Etsy? So there's a number of ways we can do that. Now, let me just work it out exactly which one of these pictures we need to look at first. This one, I think, is the first one to look at. So Kate Gallagher lived with Dan Esty. She's 41, he's 46, in Boulder, Colorado, Crested Butte, Colorado. And we believe that the son is called Benjamin. Okay, so that's the connection to Dan Esty. And remember that address, 297 Cascadilla Street. So now that address becomes really important. So there's a lot of stuff here. So I'm going to bore you silly here. So this is 1122 King LLC. So that's the company that kind of runs 1122 King Road. And it's registered to 297 Cascadilla Street, Crested Butte, Colorado. And you know, Dan Esty is mentioned in a lot of this paperwork. I'm not sure if he's mentioned in this particular one, but he's mentioned in a lot of the paperwork. So, you know, we think there's a very strong tie here to that Eugene, Oregon car. 297 Cascadilla Street, Dan Esty, there you go. And there's a lot of this, okay? There is a lot of evidence. 1122 King Road, Dan Esty is the signatory on that document. This was May the 2nd of 2017, it looks like. Not exactly sure about that. So there's a lot of these documents, okay? So this is 1122 King Road, Dan Esty, 297 Cascadilla Street. I think I've probably given you enough, but there's a lot more I can give you if you need it. 1122 King LLC, Cascadilla Street, Crested Boot, blah, blah, blah. There's also records that I can't find right now, but this one says 1119 King, and I think 1119 and 1121 King, or 1112 King, sorry, are both on the same documents or something. So anyway, the house next door to 1122 is where I think that Ben, the stepson, stayed. Okay, so this is the Kohberger registration for the car kind of thing. So he has a 2015 Elantra. This was the plate at the time. Obviously, it changed when he registered it on the 18th of November, but it was registered to this address. So, you know, it's definitely his car, right? And one thing you can see here is that it was serviced at different times and the number of miles. Now, the number of miles from 96,000 on the 26th of January of 22 to 20th of April, he went to 101,000. So somewhere there, he's done 5,000 miles. So there's some speculation that maybe he drove to Idaho at some point and so on. This one here, 101 to 111,000, there's some speculation that he drove to Idaho shortly after this title issued and updated kind of thing. We're assuming that this is when Kohberger got the car from his mum pretty much and then drove to Idaho, to Moscow, Idaho. So we think he moved to Moscow, Idaho shortly after the 20th of April. That's our guess kind of thing. But then you see on the 18th of November here is where he registered it in Washington. So he got a new tag and everything at that point. Now notice, this is very interesting that a lot of people haven't noticed. Here, there's a recall issued for any Hyundai Elantra between 2011 and 2016. And they've got some kind of excuse, but I believe that this is the police trying to get this car returned to a mechanics, and there's like a tag on the car saying if this car comes into your garage or your shop, please inform the police immediately kind of thing. So I think this is a bogus recall that was sent out to all Hyundai owners just to find the one that they wanted on the 1st of December. And I think that's when they lost Kohberger. And I think they did this to try and to find him again kind of thing. That's my guess. I'm just very suspicious. Okay, is there anything else in here? There's a lot of stuff in here. I don't know how much of this we need to go through right now. So we know he was pulled over a number of times, and we know his Pennsylvania plate was set to expire on November the 30th. So it's not really that shocking that he renewed his plate on the 18th, but very useful for him that he did that so that he had new plates. So this is a Hyundai Elantra, they think, that was outside one of the houses close to 1122 King. Now, I'm not sure if this looks to me more like where Jack lived, which is kind of at the back, sort of over here. So I'm not sure if this is relevant or not. But there's definitely a Hyundai Elantra at some point in the house next door to 1122, which I think is the SD Elantra. This is asking about that gas station car footage. Was the photo taken before or after the crime? So this was at the time when we thought the crimes happened before 4 a.m. But now we think some of them happened after 4 a.m. So the poster was saying, we think the crimes happened between 3 and 4. This is 1.2 miles away from the gas station, and it seems like it's driving away from towards the crime, at 3:45 a.m. And it was going really quick, speeding, zooming, going fast. Was it fleeing the crime or was it after the crime? I think it was going fast because it was trying to get back to the scene of the crime because he realized he'd forgotten his knife sheath, I think. Okay, so that's just my theory. Okay, so what else have we got here? I don't think we need to look at that. Don't need to look at that. What's this one? Okay, so police ask for the public's help in locating the Hyundai Elantra, December the 7th, December the 8th, that kind of time period, just so you know. Okay. So this is the Hyundai Elantra that was abandoned in Oregon. This is the VIN number I showed you before. So I did the Carfax on it. And this was all the information that I could find on it. So if anybody spots anything here that's particularly interesting, let me know. Notice that it's in, Colorado for a lot of these incidents here. Notice that these recalls were issued way after the crimes, so these ones are not relevant to this crime, I don't think. But notice that this car has no tracking after. So this was generated by Carfax just a couple of months ago, but there's no history of this car after 2022. So this, I think, is the abandoned Elantra. And I think that kind of proves that it is that one because there's no history after this, so they haven't taken it to a gas station, to a mechanic garage or anything like that since the crimes happened. So since September, just before the crimes happened, nothing has happened to this car. Now notice that this was when a new title or registration was issued, a new owner was reported. So just remember that. Okay. Don't think there's anything else here that's really that useful. Oh, so there's this bit. So this Trey Patterson guy, which we think is a fake ID for Brian or for the perp, seems to have a schizophrenic interest in car pieces, the parts of a car, the sensors, the wiring and stuff. And they seem to be having a bit of an episode in this post, it seems. So they said that their radio and the car are in cahoots, either for me or against me. And the last possibility, they would throw me in an asylum for saying it, so I won't. So I think this person is having a bit of an episode at this point. But the key point here is we see this from the dashboard of this person's car at the time. I want to know if this is a Hyundai Elantra dashboard. I don't know if it is or not. If it is, it would really help a lot, I think. If it isn't, if it's the black truck, that would be interesting too. So, and also notice that the music that is playing at this point. And I think what he's basically saying here is this music came on at a key time for him. Notice it says 11:32. This post was posted around the times of the crimes. I can't remember exactly the time, but the Facebook account has been, disabled. It was actually this is another one of those that was disabled exactly the day that Brian was arrested, within about 24 hours of him being arrested, it was gone. So I would like to know whether this dashboard is from a Hyundai Elantra or maybe a black truck. So if anyone knows, please let me know. What else do we have here? That's the same as the other one we just looked at, really. This is just showing you, the make and model and the year of his car, so you know that this is, what Brian's car looks like. And I think his car does not have the sunroof, but one of the cars in one of the videos did have the sunroof, so I'm not sure how that fits in. Okay, so this is more Crested Butte stuff with Etsy and 1122 King Road, just proving there is that link. We've seen all of those. What's this one? Okay, so this is the gas station footage. And there was a lot of speculation about whether or not this was a Hyundai Elantra or not, because it was speeding past and it's not a great photo and so on. But there was consensus in the end that it was a Hyundai Elantra. A lot of people said it wasn't the Hyundai Elantra or wasn't relevant because it was driving away from driving towards the scene at the wrong time. But of course, now we know that at least some of the murders happened after 4 o'clock. So now we think it is relevant. So that's that. Is there anything else on this page that we need? Don't think so. Let's just see what this is. Oh yeah, so this is some warrants that have been obtained over the period of time since the crimes. So things like the TikTok of Madison, Kaylee, and Xana have been obtained and served. We see here that the 2015 white Elantra, Kohberger's white Elantra, was caught on a license plate reader in Loma, Colorado. So that's that piece that I told you where we don't know why it was in Loma, Colorado. Well, I think it's because he went to Las Vegas for Thanksgiving and he was driving from there. So the day before, Brian and his dad, or the day of, Brian and his dad driving back to Albrightsville, there is this police incident with a guy who is ex-military who seems to be having a mental breakdown or something with a weapon. He threatened to kill his roommates in their apartment, and I think he was shot in the end. Brett Kohberger, I can't remember exactly, but it's weird that his name is BK as well. And he was threatening to kill his roommates, and he was having a weird episode. And that was the day that Brian seems to be traveling from that area, well, actually from Las Vegas, I think, towards home with his dad, kind of thing. And they talk about it in the car, on the traffic stop and everything. Yeah, so the male was shot by a member of the SWAT team, so he died. So then we see that Brian Kohberger and his dad are driving through Indiana and are stopped twice by the police those couple of days. So, it's actually the same day. So that's interesting. So that was just an update of that information. Okay,